Welcome to the Cheat Code Corner podcast, season 2, sales edition, where we hit you with the cheat codes to help you advance in the areas that you care about. In this season, we will be interviewing master sellers and negotiators and key account directors. These are all people that have brought on tens of millions of dollars across their careers. These people know how to pitch. They're very persuasive. They're very charming. They're authentic. And the idea is we're going to be able to better understand what it takes to become a successful salesperson, how to do positioning, but more importantly, how to build these strong and deep client relationships. A lot of the information that they share, you'll be able to incorporate into your own day-to-day world, and hopefully that'll be able to help you win. All right, well, hopefully you enjoy the season. I'm your host, DC, and today we have a very, very special guest. Let me tell you, this guy is a killer. He's a proper Irishman from Dublin, super charming. And when it comes to sales and new business sales, I mean, this guy's rep is unmatched. I think something crazy like out of 6 years, 72 quarters, like he missed only twice. President's Club. This guy has made hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of deals. I mean, he is a monster. Not only that, he's kind of elevated to being a manager, but on the personal side, he's been to like 90 different countries, which is insane. He has e-commerce business. He does intermittent fasting. He's about to run a marathon. He used to know Conor McGregor back in the day. I mean, this guy is just, his story is insane. So I am so excited to interview and to introduce Iain McNamara. What's good, Iain? How you feeling, brother?
Doing good, thanks, Damien. Cheers for having me on.
Thanks, man. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's so funny. I ran into you at the gym, as to be expected, because I knew you're always working out. And it was funny because when I was thinking about season 2 of the podcast, I was, it's a sales edition. And I was actually thinking specifically about who are some of the best salespeople that I know. And you were one of them. And so it was just like serendipitous, like that I ran into you. And so I was like, it's fate. I knew it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not in the gym as much as I like to be. So I think the 2 times you bumped into me, have probably the 2 times I've been in there in the last 6 months. But yeah, it's funny. I think the last time we both see each other, both times bumped in the gym, and unfortunately, you're lifting far more than me.
Hey, well, listen, like you just told me though, what are you doing, like a marathon right now?
I'm going to be doing the New York Marathon, in a couple of months. So never done one before. So it's, just trying to get I probably left it a little bit late in the training front, but trying to squeeze maybe 3 months training into like 8 weeks. So we'll get there. Monster.
I love it. I love the ambition though. And I feel like salespeople have that, right? Like so many salespeople, they're always just hunting for a goal. Almost so many salespeople I know, new business salespeople in particular, are always, whether it's very goal-oriented people. And so I was curious, Iain. I mean, we met, it might've been 6 years ago now, I think, right?
Yeah, I reckon so. Yeah.
6-7 years ago. And, I don't think I ever asked, but like, how did you even get started in sales? Because I'm not really sure.
Yeah, to be honest, like, I wouldn't say I fell into it to a degree, but like, it was probably later than a lot of people. Like after I graduated originally, I worked abroad. I worked in Mexico for a couple of years, like in an agency, then worked in London in a fintech company for a couple of years, and then decided to take some time out to go traveling with like my 2 best friends.
Yeah.
And then when I got back to Dublin, I'd heard great things about this company, NextRoll. I had a few friends that were working in there, and it just kind of really appealed to me. And I'd never really worked in sales before, to be perfectly honest. Like the idea, the word of sales was quite daunting, I think. But I really enjoyed the interview process. The company really appealed to me, and it just really went well from there. I think my initial maybe thoughts of what sales were pretty unfounded, but kind of just came into it. Like they were growing in Dublin and heard great things through some friends and kind of applied for the job.
Gotcha. I mean, it's so interesting because so many people I know that have careers in sales, they kind of did fall into it to some degree, but then there's a lot of people that kind of like just, whether they knew they were in sales or they couldn't get into finance, or like I wasn't smart enough to get into finance, you know what I mean? But I still had that hustle in me. So I was like, all right, well, for me, at least it was something where it kind of aligned with my lifestyle or the things that I wanted. I was personable. I kind of wanted to help people and things. So I didn't know what avenue to apply that to really. But I figured like with sales, it could provide the lifestyle that you want. You get challenged. It ain't easy. So I felt like it kind of was a good fit.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like at the end of the day, I think that no matter what you do, you're still selling something at the end of the day. If you work in recruitment, you're a seller. If you work in marketing, you're selling your stats to your boss, but like you're selling something. So I think, and also like if you can do sales, or even if you try it and are semi-successful, you do well, you can do anything really. I think after that, like you can start your own business, you can whatever it is, go change company, go to like a bigger company, whatever it might be. But it's a great stepping stone to get like kind of entry level understanding of sales and the processes. And from there, like it's really applicable for any sort of role, even if it's not sales per se, but if you do go into recruitment or any other part of a business, like you're selling something, be it yourself or a product.
You talk to any entrepreneur, any business owner, they will tell you outside of the operational stuff that they need to do, they're having to sell, whether it's to the customers, whether it's to get funding. I have some friends, I'm like, what do you think raising funding and capital is? You think that that's not sales? That is sales.
100%, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want people to invest in your company or your idea, you're going to have to sell it. That's what it is. That's why the guy we work was able to, you know what I'm saying, was able to like get all these billions of SoftBank and all these companies to invest in his idea, is because the guy was a great salesperson and very, very charismatic. He had some financials kind of behind it, but he was a salesperson.
100%. Yeah, if you're selling out your idea yourself, and like that's why I think it's been great. Like, and it's something I think I definitely recommend to anyone, even coming out of university, whatever it might be. Like, I think it's a great first step in your career. Like, obviously there's some grind with it, but like at the beginning, you're not going to go in at a high level. But it's I don't know. I think it's a great foundation for wherever you want to go in a career afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody, but I do want to touch on that because, like I want to touch on the idea about first getting into sales really quickly, because a lot of people who, whether they get into it or whether they want to shift into it, they have a lot of ideas on what they think sales are. You know, they think we're selling air conditioners or it's super transactional. No shade to selling air conditioners, by the way, but like they think it's transactional. So what did you expect when you were going into that first new business role? Like, what were your expectations? And then what surprised you that you like once you actually started doing the job?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think similar to what you said at the beginning there, I think when you initially hear about sales, you think it's like I don't know, like the car salesman, whatever it might be, you know, you're just sweet talking, kind of being a little bit, I wouldn't say sleazy, but like, you know, it has a negative connotation, I think, in a lot of like, you know, countries around the world. And I think when you think of tech companies, they've obviously tried to put like different names around the role to make it sound less appealing, like that. So BDR or account executive, whatever it is. Yeah. So I wasn't really too sure going into it. And like, I think tech companies and other like software SaaS companies, they do a great job of like selling like the benefits of it and what you'll learn. And that's what kind of convinced me to go into it. And then when I actually got into it, I found it was very different. Like, you're still like obviously selling at the end of the day, but I really loved the consultative side of it. Like, it was, I never felt like I was tricking someone into doing something, or like, you know, if it wasn't right for the company, I wouldn't pursue it. So a lot of time that means walking away from deals. And obviously as a seller, you have targets, but sometimes you have to walk away from deals if it's not right for the company. And so I actually just love the way I initially had this, like a concept that it was something with a negative connotation, whereas the more I got into it over the years, I've actually really enjoyed it, because you can not only control your income and make a lot of cash if you're doing well with it, but it's actually way more consultative in that you're learning about businesses, you're trying to tailor some sort of solution to their needs. And if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. And if it is, it is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think what it is, though, I think you hit the nail on the head in that the perception of sales, there's a lot, the salespeople that most people encounter, you know, are transactional sales. They're trying to sell you something at Best Buy. They're trying to do that. So that is more transactional. But at this level where you're talking about deals, tens of or hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatnot, the investments, no one is just making some spur of the moment decision. No, you know what I mean? All of all the people that you talk to are speaking to 5 other competitors.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? They're coming in. And so I like the consultative part of it, because you have to educate yourself. You have to educate yourself on the product, the competitors, who you're selling, what you're selling. But I don't think a lot of people realize that. And so I think what happens is either they keep this perception, or some people think, oh, I can just go into sales, and then they fail miserably when they find out that you have to be a little bit more than just charming.
That's it. And it takes time. Like, don't get me wrong, I made hundreds of mistakes at the beginning, like, you know, just going in there, almost trying to be straight to the point of selling and like talking, pitching. And like, but it comes in time, I guess. Like, you start learning what works, what doesn't work. But yeah, I found it like over the years, like really enjoyable. And I think that's part of like to being like people being successful in it, is actually like being like, you know, authentic, wanting to learn about a business. And then from there, if there is a fit, like making recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I love also too, that you recognize that you had some ideas about how it was going to be. And then you were open enough to be like, oh, like, it's actually not exactly that. It's hard, but there's a lot of different things that you can learn from that. So I was looking at your CV, and now I remember when I was there, you were crushing it already. But then I was looking at you had like a 5 or a 6 year stretch where you you were hitting.
Yeah, it was good. I think I'm in my 28th quarter at the company. I think I've missed maybe 2 of the 28, which has been
wow, that's insane.
They still haunt me to this day, those 2.
yeah, that's good, dude. You remind me of like Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers he remembers apparently every single interception that he's thrown. He remembers him going back to college.
Really?
Yeah,
it's interesting. I think I've talked a lot over the years about with some of the sales managers I've worked with, and it's interesting. I think what can sometimes happen to sellers that when they have success, they can get super excited and almost too excited, and it goes to their head, and they're splashing their cash, whatever it might be. But then they also get too cocky and they don't do prep for the next quarter. And one of my early managers, he always told me don't take the highs too highs or the lows too lows. So
yep.
I've always found when there was success, I was kind of straight into the next one, and then similar with the lows. That's the thing as well. They do stick with you, but it can affect people pretty negatively if they have a couple of bad quarters. It can really be a bad rut. But yeah, I find if you can control your emotions, even though it is a high stress job,
how did you do that though? I mean, you brought up, because here's the thing, I'm a little bit high strung. So I try to stay on the outside, Damien is calm and collected. But on the inside, you know what I mean? I'm having panic attacks. I've lost whatever hair I used to have. You know what I mean? It's tough, man. It's tough to that quarter after quarter, year after year. It is not easy to hit 100% for 5 years in a row in your space. That's not easy. I mean, how did you, and I know there's a lot of things that go into that, but I mean, how do you think, what was your secret sauce for that? I mean, how were you able to stay so consistent?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of a few things. I think, I guess a lot of it comes down to your own personal kind of situation. I've always kind of been very independent, that I'm just out there kind of, fighting for my own life or my own kind of well-being. It's I don't have a family to support, so my risk isn't as big as others. I know people have families that support kids, whatever. So the fear of failure, even though it's there, at the end of the day, it's not going to be super bad, the worst case scenario, if I do fear. So I don't think whenever there were some doubts in the role, it doesn't eat away at me, because I know the worst case scenario, it doesn't work out, you move company, but you go again. Whereas obviously other people have different financial implications involved. So I think not having that fear, and it's obviously difficult to do. At the end of the day, it's just a job, right? There's plenty more things in the world. There's people who've left the company that I've worked with who maybe didn't work out with, they go somewhere else and they're one of the best sellers in the company.
Yeah.
So it's just more, not taking it too much to heart, and that's obviously easier than done. But on the consistency side, the one thing I would say that I found really successful is that, and which some people are good at and some not as much, is actually the kind of internal networking in the company. So that's in terms of when it comes to sales, a lot of people think it's just a seller who sells and then it goes live, but you have to work with the likes of your onboarding team, your account management, customer success, solution engineering, everything. And one thing I found that really benefited me over the years was that I kind of tried to work on those internal relationships a lot from the onset. And whenever problems came up, I could just ping someone, gets fixed, you get on a phone call. So I wouldn't have to necessarily follow direct protocol all the time, we're doing tickets that will elongate a process by a few days or a week or two. And vice versa, if they need help, I'll help them out. So and some of those relationships now are really good friendships. I'd still hang out with a lot of these people that I would have worked with over the years. But I found that internal networking, it's really beneficial for a few reasons. It'll help you obviously get shit done really quick. Not sure if I can curse.
It's all good.
But it'll help you get stuff done really quick, and even from a career advancement standpoint then as well. It helps your mobility kind of going up the ladder. And if you think about even post a company, when you do eventually leave, if you do leave, you have these relationships that are built up, and these are the people who leave the company. They're going to be working for other big tech companies, SaaS companies. So it's something I've seen some people that they're very good at selling sometimes, but they don't necessarily have amazing internal soft skills.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily. So I found that helped me a lot with success in that leveraging those relationships. Obviously, you have to be on your game, consistent with your outreach, prospecting, but I think there's a lot of people who are really important to your success. And if you don't have those relationships, like you're kind of destined for failure, really.
Yeah, I love that actually. So what it sounds like, it's just you kind of look at it. Of course, you have to cover the normal sales aspects, right? You got to be a good pitcher. You got to be able to present well, all the hard and soft skills there. But what it sounds like you're saying is, look, there's a lot of things that go into, whether it's getting a campaign running or getting a client to be happy to renew. And what it sounds like is that you establish and search out and support and nurture the relationships internally that are going to help those campaigns run or get launched, or that are going to continue to get people to spend. That's what I'm hearing. Is that pretty much accurate?
Yeah, I think 100%. Like that's it. Like you can put the success down to a certain a percentage of what you do yourself, but I wouldn't have had that continued success without people there to help me out, and like that wouldn't have happened without those relationships. Like I've seen people who don't build those relationships, and then when they need something done, it takes time. No one's going to bend over backwards for you, but when you have those in place, like you can get stuff fixed. You can get upsells done. Whatever.
I get that, man. I mean, I think so. It's interesting because that's one of the things too that like I've tried to focus on. Where it is like I learn the internal process really well. I understand like what are some of the things that I can take off their plate to get something accelerated. So the downfall of that, though, is that when you're taking on that additional 10 or 20% work, there's burnout, there's frustration. There's only so much you can do when you're already at 100%. So, how have you been able to kind of then do both? Because what it sounds like is that, not always, but it sounds like that you're carrying a little bit extra load there is what I'm hearing. Is that possible?
I'm not just in the body. To be honest, like I'm a bit of an organization freak. I actually enjoy like project management element to like the sales job. And that's one thing I guess I didn't know before. Like you tend to think it's just sale to customer success or account management, whatever it might be. But there is a lot of spinning plates that you're doing at the same time. You have this client who's in proposal stage, this client who's like pushing back on a contract, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But I actually like spinning those plates and like prioritizing. So like I was very obsessed with having Google Sheets and docs around like prioritization of clients' needs, what the next steps are for each client.
Okay. Did you organize that based on revenue or based on company size? So for example, let's say, for instance, you have 10 clients that are in onboarding, and that'd be lucky, right? Because that's a lot of clients. But let's just say you had 10 deals floating. How did you go about, and this is I want to know tactically, how would you organize those 10 clients typically? Like what's the framework for that?
It's not just strictly revenue. So I think it's a cost benefit almost analysis. Like you'll have your quota for that. We work off quarterly quotas. So you'll have your quota, and then you'll realize obviously how much budget is associated to each client.
Yes.
How long you think it might take to get them live, and how much effort it will take to get them live. So if your low hanging fruit are the lowest budgets, maybe not focus on them too much. Like, just give them as limited support as you need, get them live, whatever. Mm-hmm. Not to say they're not having a good experience, but that you're just like, you're not over indexing your resources in there. But it would generally be prioritized a little bit on like time to going live and the revenue associated to it, because I know that I need these 3 or 4 clients to go live by X date for me to actually overachieve my target. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I probably prioritize that, put more time and effort into those ones just to make sure that we're getting everything discussed on a call, and even having checklists prior to a call, knowing that I have to discuss 5 or 6 issues on each call in order to get onto the next stage of the process, which might be onboarding or like proposal, whatever it might be. So it's definitely one thing I found that it helps. Like I was kind of obsessed with like not only using Salesforce or whatever CRM system you're using for pipeline management, but actually you're almost my own pipeline management tool.
Of course. Yeah. The Iain CRM, right?
Kind of, yeah. It's mainly just for like your active conversations, etc. But it just helped me prioritize. And when it comes to start, even at the end of the quarter, starting planning for next quarter, identifying these 8 or 10 accounts you say that are going to get me towards my target next quarter. Mm-hmm. And then focus on which ones are going to be either the quickest go live, most budget associated with it, and then not losing focus on. It's tough when you're having like those amount of clients, but it's a good problem, right? Like it's better than
great. It's great. It's great problem. No, that's good, man. It's because it's so interesting that I found. I mean, the consistency is the hardest thing anyone will ever tell you. So like to be able to be consistent, and you saying, okay, well, there's project management, which is one side, which sounds like you enjoy. Then there's relationships as well. What would you say also, before we kind of like start transitioning to some other things, is what would you say is your superpower from a sales, an individual salesperson perspective?
Good question. I think like, I think it'll probably come down to like, I found it, I think you maybe touched on at the very beginning. Like, I think when it comes to actually building relationships, like, again, at the very beginning, I thought it was like you almost become a different person. I call it like you become a salesperson and you're like a different persona. And I know everyone like you might have to change something. Like you can't be saying certain words on sales calls, but
right.
I think that one thing I found pretty easy to do over time was kind of build trust with clients. And that was from being transparent, like walking away from deals, saying if it's not a right fit, etc. And I think a lot of people when they go into sales, they think to become a seller, you have to kind of sell out a little bit of who you are and become this other persona. And I found after a while, like when I started getting success, that just being really upfront about stuff and open and not changing who you are, like people kind of buy from people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You need a product. You obviously need a product that works, which is great. But at the end of the day, like people are buying from people and what they actually build trust around. And I found that fairly easy to do. Not easy. There's always tougher clients, but
yeah. Well, let me ask you though, because I'm going to challenge you a little bit because I am a salesperson, by the way. You're talking about when things are going well, generally when you've already had on the back of some success already, where you're not desperate. And we all know what desperation feels like. When desperation kicks in, it becomes harder and more difficult to give up deals that are on the belt line. You know what I mean? Right. And I do agree with you that being your authentic self is important, but it is more difficult to walk away from those deals when you're desperate, right? So I guess what I would like to understand is how do you still maintain your authenticity even when the desperation is there, even when you're just like, oh, I would need that deal, but
yeah, it is difficult. Like I've definitely 100% been there. Like a few quarters where like you're behind and you're trying to chase, and I think at the end of the day, you have to do what is probably best for their company. Like, and it is a tough one. Like, right, I'm not very religious or anything like that, but I do believe in like some bad sales karma when you're doing bad deals. It'll keep coming and biting you in the ass.
Yeah.
So, in my whole time in the company, I don't know there's many times that I've pushed a deal through that like I know it's not a right fit.
Yeah.
But I do agree it's a tough one because like at the end of the day you do have a quota, and like sales management leadership, they don't listen to excuses around no, it wasn't a good fit. If they have $10,000 ready to go, like they have $10,000 ready to go.
Yeah.
It is tough. But like I think there's things you can even do then to like almost like look at other elements. Like instead of getting a bad deal, like what can I do to increase the value of other deals? Like how can I leverage more value from the good conversations than focusing on bad deals and getting like okay value from them, but like actually, because the last thing was a quick churn where a client's unhappy or whatever it might be, and then that reflects badly on you at the end of the day. Is
100%, and that's actually one of the things that I kind of tell with some of the younger guys that are like on my team and things. I tell them it's like, look, man, like you got to understand the amount of time and effort that goes into one of those tough deals, and then it ends up being a terrible experience for everybody, and they don't renew on top of that. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, man. Well, let's switching gears a little bit. So, you've done the sales guy thing for a while. You've been crushing it, doing really well there. Would love to understand now. My understanding is you're a sales manager now, right?
Yeah, I've been doing that role for about 2 years or 2 years now. Yeah, 2 years or so in that role.
Okay. So then what was the, how did you end up becoming a manager? Because I know salespeople like to be but not every salesperson is a good manager or becomes a manager. So how'd you become a manager?
It's funny. I don't know if I am either, but I know I'm joking. So I think essentially I'd been kind of climbing the sales ladder, and I was really enjoying it. Like a lot of people sometimes think that as you go up the sales ladder, be it like up the individual contributor, like be it IC2 up to 5, whatever it might be. A lot of people sometimes think, oh, that's a potential lack of ambition. But I loved it. Like you get higher targets, you're earning more money if you're doing well at it, and it's like you don't deal with a lot of the other stress that's involved with say management. But I got to a stage where I found like the company, I wasn't learning as much. To be honest, like I was still doing it consistently, but I didn't feel super challenged. And then at the time, our team was expanding, and I kind of expressed interest in like moving into management. And I'd always been involved in a lot of different parts of the company, like the business unit, be it like training, interviewing, onboarding new reps, etc. And so it kind of I wouldn't say it just happened, but like I expressed my desire and we worked on a plan basically to kind of move into that role.
Yeah.
And it did coincide with kind of the team expanding as well, which kind of made it a little bit easier, I guess. Like there wasn't like anyone was moved out of a role, but there was an additional role created.
Right. Gotcha. So what has it been? I mean, and you've been doing it for 2 years, so a good amount of time. I mean, what are kind of some of the things like the ups and then some of the pitfalls of, in your role?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because I think I've experienced a lot of things in the 2 years, like given that we went through the likes of COVID, and so there's been like people coming and other people going during that time. So it's been a real roller coaster, to be honest. Like I've enjoyed it. Like you learn an awful lot, like just even like the types of conversations you have with people. But it is quite different from the actual IC world. Like
I believe
there's a lot to be said. Like I have a lot of my friends and colleagues who are like doing the IC role still, and like they might only work like 7 or 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day, and like they crush it. That's it. But like you're generally on the management side, you're kind of in meetings all day. You're talking a lot. Like so, you're almost like, even you can tell now my voice is a little hoarse. You're just talking for hours on end.
Meetings and talking.
Kind of like, so it's like the part I've loved about it has been like actually seeing new hires develop, like when you get them on board, training and actually seeing them start closing deals. I know it's very cliche, but I've enjoyed probably like hitting quota more as a team than, so say my sellers targets altogether, my targets, I've actually enjoyed hitting target more as a team than actually individual.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I get more of a kick. It's a bit like sports, I guess. I'm probably more associated to like soccer or team sports than an individual sport. So I've really enjoyed that aspect. Like, part of the difficult side, I guess, has been, it's probably even like stepping away from the call side. Like you would obviously join with like ramping reps and like for bigger calls, but you're not on as many calls.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I've definitely felt myself getting a little rustier sometimes.
I was just about to say that. I was like, you're not as sharp then, huh, Ian? You ain't going to be as sharp when you're not in the trenches. You know what I mean? With the soldiers, like you lose that edge, homeboy. You ain't a killer anymore.
I know. You got to sharpen the tools. No, I do still enjoy as much calls as possible, but it's you're not in the weeds as much. So yeah, I think there's definitely some aspects that are difficult, even around difficult conversations. Like I was fortuitous in my sales time with the company that I wasn't the receiving end of difficult conversations, but when you're on the other side, potentially having those, that's been like a major learning curve. Like I've never would have experienced that or have to do it before. A
friend of mine, he started a business and now he has on his staff like 200 people, but like he's still in his office, it's like smaller. And he was just like, he mentioned things. He's like, one of the things about it, and he's a CEO, but still like a position of leadership. He's like, you got to have these sensitive conversations all the time. More than you're used to, historically.
That's
it. Yeah. And he's just like, man, he was like, that's probably one of the things that like you don't plan on, you don't think about until you're in it. And then he's like, but that's growth, right? Like if there are areas, I think one of the great things, whether it's about management or just changing roles in general, is that it's designed to not to target your weaknesses, but to push you to grow, to improve in areas that you're not. So if there's something that if you're not used to having uncomfortable conversations, guess what? You're about to have some.
That's it. Yeah, I think like going into the role, I think it reminded me a bit of like was it like Michael Scott in The Office? Like you want to just be like, a lot of people just want to be liked by everyone, but like you can't. Like there's always going to be a tough conversation. Like it's not even tough conversations, but like might be someone's having a bad quarter, maybe there's something going on personally, whatever it is, and like there's those kind of things, and you're not really prepped for those. And that was definitely, without a doubt, like a lot of times just kind of going with the flow and then kind of reflecting about maybe how I could have handled that differently or better. But it's been really interesting. But there is definitely advantages to both sides, being either management or C-level. Like I think people think it's a natural progression, but there's a lot to be said as well for like just crushing it in the IC side.
Yeah. I mean, so it's funny because, I have my MBA, right? So oftentimes people would say, oh, like, do you want to be a manager? I'm like, no. Not historically. Now I'm starting to think a little bit differently about it because, when you've been selling for 10 years and you're doing okay, after a while, it's like, okay, cool. I'll hit 100% or I'll make a ton of cash. All right, cool. But then you do want, after a while, you would like a little bit of diversity in terms of like what you're doing. But I'll tell you, for the longest, I was an IC. I am an IC currently, at least, until hopefully maybe I get into management. But I mean, the flexibility for me has been fantastic. You know what I mean? Like I have other interests and things. And so I don't know if that was a natural progression for me, but now I think it's more, I think I'd like to like help some other folks and pay it forward and try to help some folks, make some bread too. So that's where like my head's been out. But, there's pros and cons, like you said, it's not a definite track.
Yeah, the flexibility is a huge one, like, to be honest. Like, I'm still very fortunate that I have no flexibility with that role. But yeah, like, it's not like before whereby you would have, I don't know, like you might only have to put in a few hours a day, and if you're crushing it, and like, be a bit more flexible. But whereas now you're busy days, like throughout the day. I fortunately don't take work home, but it's more, you do end the day, you're a bit more tired than maybe where's the seller sometimes.
Oh, for sure. So what is, there's oftentimes there's a lot of folks that would like to get into a management role, but maybe like, so what would you say is like, besides you have to hit your goal, besides making sure that, you're well liked in the organization, besides having to demonstrate your interest directly to your manager, those are all normal things. Like if you don't know to do that, trying to jump from IC to manager, then you don't know much. Besides that stuff, what would you say is, whether it's a cheat code or just something that is critical to making sure that you're able to get that jump from IC to manager?
Yeah, it's actually it's a really good question, because to be honest, at the very, like, I hadn't a clue for a long time, like I was kind of, I wouldn't say coasting, but like I was enjoying like climbing the ladder, and then when it came to like management, I think at the time the manager was like, if that position comes available, like, would you be the first name on the list? And like, I was kind of like, in my head, I was like, oh, I should be, because I'm crushing it. But then it took me a while to realize that like your own management team, directors, whatever it might be, like they're obviously looking at your best interest, but like you don't often get approached about a management job or like that. Like, so unless you like approach them and put your interests on their radar, where you want to go, and it's not going to happen today or tomorrow, but they'll hopefully work with you to work on a roadmap to get there. So eventually, like when I did kind of come around to like realize that I want to maybe progress into management, it was about having those kind of conversations. Like, I want to do X, Y, or Z. How do I get there? And the one thing I'd say is that obviously if you're crushing the core role, but to anyone that is like kind of wanting to do it, I would say like try and make yourself invaluable in a company, in that like maybe you're crushing the core role, but you're also involved in hiring, you're involved in training, you do corporate social responsibility events, whatever it is. Like, because when you go to that conversation saying, I want to move here in management, they can't really say no, because they won't want to lose you if you're invaluable to the company.
Yeah.
Like I found the conversation on my side, it went well in that they're obviously very receptive of it, but not sounding anyway like big head or anything, but I felt like they couldn't really say no, because I was doing so much, not just in the core role, but outside of that I don't think there was a risk that they would want to lose me. And like, it wasn't anyway like any hostile conversations, but it was like,
of course,
I was kind of saying just like where I wanted to go and how do I get there. And because at the time I was, let's say, contributing in a lot of different areas that they had to happen basically.
I love that, Ian. Like, that is a cheat code. I mean, like, because we already know that there's, you have to express interest. We already know the table stakes of what you have to do already. But I think I really do like the fact that, I mean, just what you said, which is if you're moving in different spaces within the organization, in different groups, contributing, you're building relationships there anyway.
Yeah, 100%.
That's already happening. So maybe you even hear early how a position kind of comes up, or maybe you can ask people in management, when you're in a meeting or something, just to kind of, off the record conversations, you can gain some insight as well into that role and those expectations. So I think you're right. Like, making yourself invaluable is going to help you to expose yourself to other people in the company. You're going to learn, and you're also going to gain access to the information, maybe of, if a position's going to open. So I love that, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the one thing I'd say is like maybe I wouldn't say I learned this like the hard way, but like no one's going to come to you saying you're going to management next. Like, you have to kind of instigate action. Even though like you might think it's obvious that you should be the person who goes into that role if it comes available, but someone else is doing work behind the scenes, whatever it might be. I think it's really important, and that took me a while to realize that I had to actually instigate the action. And then at the time I was doing a lot of other stuff, but it was only when it's on the radar they kind of will actually start building out a map. And it's never too early to start those conversations. Even if someone comes in, like I started as an SDR in the company, and it's never too early to like put where you'd like to go on the radar. Like, it's not going to happen in like 6 months or a year maybe, but it's great to have it there so you can work on plans.
I was like, plant those little seeds. You know what I mean? Plant those little seeds. All right. Very cool, man. Very cool. I know we went through two different sections. We went through your IC life and we went through some of your management. So I really appreciate all the insight, man, that this is super helpful. So in this section right now, towards the end of the conversation, we go through something called power questions. There are a bunch of questions where they're designed to just kind of get a little bit of insight into who you are, what makes you tick. So don't think about them too much. They're kind of like rapid fire.
Okay.
All right, you ready? All right, let's kick off. No, numero uno. How many hours of sleep do you get?
8. 8. I'm not a big sleeper, but I need my 8. I'm good.
What does your diet look like today?
So my diet, it's pretty decent. I like to think I do intermittent fasting. So I generally only eat like between the hours of 11:30 and 7. But it's generally good. Probably falls off the wagon on the weekend where I might head out with friends, and that's kind of
turn up a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, not ideal on the weekend. So I'd say I'm a 5-day a week pretty decent, and then 2 days that's not ideal.
All right, cool. Didn't know you were doing intermittent fasting. It's working out well for you?
It's been good, yeah. Actually, initially I found it tough in the morning. Like I don't drink coffee, so I used to find the energy was a little bit low, but now I can actually eat in the morning. I feel like a bit unwell if I eat early.
Gotcha. What's your favorite activity to unwind?
I love traveling. I think I mentioned at the start of the thing, like I've been to about 90 or so countries. So
90?
Yeah.
I said 30. You've been to 90 countries?
Yeah, I've been a lot around the world. Yeah. So the aim is to get to 100 by, I don't know, I keep pushing it out, but COVID didn't help. So yeah, I love traveling. I slowed up a bit during COVID, so trying to get somewhere new all the time. Outside that, like I like sports. Like I know it's very cliche, but I'm a big soccer fan, so I love either watching, not playing as much as I get a bit older, but like more watching and just kind of jerk. I love heading out with friends, just having a bit of a good time, like a few drinks and just
turning up. All right.
Yeah.
What do you? Well, we talked a little bit about the superpower, but what are you reading or listening to?
I am currently reading Born to Run. It's by Christopher McDougall, I think it's by. As I'm trained for the marathon, so it's I think it's like the most famous running book kind of written. It's pretty good. It's about the kind of history of mankind, how we started like running and the rationale behind it, and kind of modern day what's like. And so it's actually been a really good read.
Yeah, it sounds great. Awesome, man. What would you say drives you to like keep elevating, going from IC to manager and just keep on pushing, doing a marathon right now, intermittent fasting?
I would say it's a bit like, it's just for myself. Like I know a lot of times growing up, it's about kind of like, making family proud. And like my mother, for example, like growing up, like she was very, it was like she put a lot of effort into raising me. So you want to make them proud. But I think a lot of it's kind of self-actualization to a degree. Like, you're kind of, your hierarchy of needs. I just kind of like, I like knowing that I'm pushing myself and doing the best I can. And the sense of achievement, like you like doing something new. So it's kind of a bit for myself. I guess a bit of the side like for the kind of family, but as you get older, I guess it's not as important. When you're a fully grown adult, it's not like you're 15 anymore. But myself, just giving myself that sense of achievement.
What makes you laugh?
I having a pint of Guinness with some friends, but I really enjoy Joe Corporate Bro. He's on Instagram. He's he does a lot of videos and memes around salespeople and sales managers. Big following. He's a 200K follower. He's grown a lot over the last years, but he makes me laugh a lot. He nails the kind of tech SaaS sales environment. So that makes me laugh a lot. Every time someone shares it in work, I'm just like, geez, spot on.
It's kind of like Silicon Valley was.
Kind of exactly, yeah. And he's been doing it for like 5 years now. But he's gained a following, but he's just kind of like little 1-minute videos on like things you hear in sales or like things SDRs say, whatever it is.
Cool. And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I always found this question really tough. Like even in like work wise, I'd like to see myself two ways. Like probably in like a maybe director of sales or like a VP of sales position. Somewhere, preferably in New York, where I currently am. Or I'd like to kind of start my own venture. I still feel like I'd like to do something on my own bat over the next few years as well.
That's cool. I got one final question for you. Where are you from in Ireland?
I'm from Dublin, the capital.
You're from proper Dublin, right?
Proper Dublin.
Okay. All right, cool. You got to tell me, right? Because we know you. I got to ask, what's your Conor McGregor story? Because I know you guys all have one, because you guys it's a tight-knit community, right? So everybody kind of knows him, 1 or 2 degrees of separation. So what's your Conor McGregor story?
I've been to a few of his fights and met him a few times. So yeah, one of my good friends from college, Artem Lobov, he's Russian, but he grew up in Ireland. Yeah, we were on the same class in the soccer team. So he's the sparring partner of McGregor. So they started together when they're 22. And Artem just retired from the UFC, like from mixed martial arts. So we would have went to a few fights. They're both in the same cards. Met about a few fights. Not a few years ago. I went to like the Diaz and the one that was here in New York. Can't remember, Alvarez and one other one. But met him a few times, but mainly kind of support my friend more so.
Gotcha. Well, listen, man, Iain, so thank you so much for hopping on the podcast, man. Really enjoyed the conversation. Learned a ton as well, even though we've known each other for a while. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, just wanted to ask you some questions, whether it's about being an IC, whether it's about how to get into management, what's the best way for them to reach you?
I'd say LinkedIn, probably. Yeah, like hit me up on LinkedIn. I know it's a tough one to spell. It's Iain McNamara, but LinkedIn's probably best. Like, more than happy to help anyone or have some chats if they have any questions around kind of entry level or mid level, whatever it might be. More than happy to give my insight.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
What's good, fam? It's time for the recap of our Irish friend, Iain McNamara. So Iain, I told you, Iain's a killer. Like, don't let the boyhood looks, you know what I mean? He looks like just like a chill kid. Like this cat, he's real. I mean, he'll go after the jugular, and he's not playing when it comes to sales. So Iain, in terms of some of the cheat codes, Iain, and I'll break them out into like 2 sections. So Iain, as it relates to new business sales, as it relates to whether it's getting into sales or just being consistent, which is really, really difficult. He basically touched upon a couple of things. So number 1, he talked about the importance of making sure that you have good internal relationships with the setup team, the account managers, any of the people that are going to take the deal once you've signed it to fruition. Those are the people that you should get on the good side. And then most people know that already. But what he's saying is establish really close relationships with them, big them up, make it so that, if you need to be able to go around the normal process, they'll help you out. So really having a strong focus on that and building that relationship is something that he said has enabled him to be consistent and successful over the years. So I would really remember that. Number 2, he talked about the importance of creating your own system of organization. So what you want to do is to organize your tasks or your deals based on ROT, which is return on time. So the idea behind it is you don't want to just organize your responsibilities or your tasks based on just revenue. You want to make sure that you're being more strategic. Hey, well, these activities are doing this activity, help this deal to get across the finish line to realize as quickly as possible. So you just need to be very smart about that and create a system that allows you to get the most bang for your time and the most bang for your buck. The third thing that he talked about, which is not really a cheat code, but I do think it's important, which is the importance of maintaining balance, meaning like not being even-keeled. Don't get too high, don't get too low, don't get too crazy. Even when you're making cash or when you're in the dumpster, in terms of just keeping it very sweet and easy. As it relates to jumping from an individual contributor role to a manager role, he said a couple of things which was really cool. He talked about the importance of planting seeds within the organization, talking about what you want to do. And of course, this is after you've obviously hit the targets and things like that, but speaking with people within the organization and laying out the plan that you want. Another thing he mentioned was making yourself invaluable. What that means is working on side projects, helping with staffing, doing any projects that you can, taking things off of people's plate. Making yourself invaluable to the organization will make it a lot easier for you to make that jump from an IC to a manager. So it's not just about doing good work. It's about actually politicking. And the final thing, which I think is a really consistent theme, and I think I'm going to attribute this to Iain, which is initiate action. He talked about that a lot during the podcast, and I really liked it. When in doubt, initiate action, start, crush, and keep on going. Hopefully you liked the episode. Please subscribe for any more, and hopefully see you soon. Take care.